Very glad you could join us. Now, the senior advocate of Nigerian human rights lawyer, Femi Falana, has stated that President Buhari-led administration is not showing enough respect for court orders. Is this a fact? I have with me Raymond Nkanebe, a legal practitioner, and Bosu Ario, Change for Africa co-founder.
That's right.
And also a public affairs analyst. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming in.
It's my pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
We all know Femi Falana's disposition when it comes to national issues is always very vocal, and this time he's redirecting focus to this administration's continued seeming disobedience to court order. To quote him, he says he sees the situation as painful and intends to write to the Attorney General of the Federation to know why Buhari is not respecting court orders. What is your immediate reaction to it? Let me come to you first, Boston.
First of all, thanks for having me on the program once again. To be honest, we have to call it spade a spade. And then injustice to one is injurious to all. The federal government do have maybe their basis for the continual detention of, say, the former NSA and then the IMN leader, zak-zaky. I mean, often at times, I've had conversations with friends in government, I mean, even a federal court judge, for example, and then explained how it is guised as, you know, to protect the nation's national interest and national security and whatever. But if the courts that has the jurisdiction of the nation to give judgment on certain matters, and even this particular matter as well, gives a judgment and say the government should go ahead and release such persons. Even the ECOWAS courts as well did give a judgment to say that they should be released. I believe they should have found a way, you know, to sort of marry the interests of the people, which the government governs, and, you know, go ahead and effect his release.
We will definitely be talking about some of these cases, hopefully time permitting. Raymond, what are your thoughts when you hear this all the time, and now Falana is bringing it back to the fore? What is your reaction?
Well, my immediate reaction is that the zak-zaky issue and that of the former NSA, Alleged Sambo Dasuki, only goes to justify what some of us have been saying, that we run an imperial presidency. Is the powers of the president, and it's such that could not be questioned. I can tell you that beyond the criminal aspect of it, I can tell you that when you secure a judgment of court against the government of a state or the federal government, it is almost impossible to reap the fruit of that judgment, because the legal framework that would have made that possible is so in favor or against the interest of the judgment creditor. You understand? So it's all in sync with the nature of presidency that we run, that haven't left the barracks.
This is a huge issue, and I hope that we'll have enough time to really look at all the issues arising. But before we go further, let's talk about now that he is a democratic leader, there seemed to be a contradiction to his disposition previously. As a military governor, when he had, what's his name again? Idiagbon. Yes. When he had Idiagbon and they were working on indiscipline at that time, he seemed to obey all court orders for people that were detained, whether for political reason or otherwise. But now it seems in a democratic setting, he is a bit, hesitant about respecting court orders. And Falana is saying, is it that there is a change of philosophy? Buhari has changed his philosophy. Raymond, can you take that?
For me, I wouldn't have all the facts in order to have that a holistic comparative analysis between the military era Buhari and the Buhari in civilian garb. Yes, but I also think that when he spent about 1 year and 6 months as a military ruler. That was between the last day of December 1983 and in August 1985 when the Babangida junta toppled him. So we have about 1 year and 7 months. So now he has ruled for some 4 years, right? And he has gotten the mandate to rule for another 4 years. So the variables, you'll be comparing two almost inconsistent variables. You understand? One about 19 months here, and then you have 36 months here. So,
yeah, but one would expect that somebody whose disposition is against indiscipline and is a fight against corruption. We do know that there are some foreign organizations that are already reacting to that, saying it's a facade. We'll come to that eventually. But you would expect that the person would follow due process now, even more.
Well, I would expect so, but that doesn't mean that they are wearing political prisoners while he was a military ruler. Because I remember when Babangida came on board, we have a situation whereby political prisoners were released. These are persons who there have been court judgment that saying they should release some of these persons, and he didn't heed those court orders. So, with all due respect to Mr. Falana SAN, I really don't think the president has his disposition to court orders is so materially different, in my own opinion.
All right, let me take this from another angle and just ask you straight up. He has lawyers, like many of them in his cabinet. The vice president is a lawyer. The senior advocate, Kayemu, is also a lawyer. We have most of these
advocates for that matter.
Many of them. How come? Is it that they're not advising the president appropriately?
I would like to take a different stand from my colleague here.
Okay.
And I just want to put in this perspective. President Buhari had run for office 3 different times before he emerged as the winner of the 2015 election. And all of those times he had gone to court, all the way to the Supreme Court. So if anybody had been at the receiving end of the judicial process, is one of them. And in all of those times, he didn't get any favorable judgment. So one would expect that he should be well grounded. He should have a robust understanding of the importance of court judgment and the entire judicial process itself. However, running a country like Nigeria, it's no walk in the park, and it is not exactly an umbrella for him to hide and then disobey court judgment. However, to run a nation and keep it stable evolves around a lot of things. And if certain elements poses a threat to the national security of a country, you would expect that certain actions are taken to protect the majority of the people. You would know of President Trump in America, how he's gotten into different ripples of how he's been asked to do certain things. It is not peculiar to Nigeria. That's all I'm saying. However, in the case of, say, zak-zaky, who is not exactly a terrorist, so to say, it's not been proven.
But on what premise is he saying that it's a threat to peace? The people, for instance, let me switch to you and ask: Is there a legal? Let me check that question again and see how I put it here. Is it valid enough reason to say that because this person poses a danger to the Nigerian public that they will be denied their freedom when the courts in the land are saying follow? Is there any legal?
Well, at the last bar conference in Abuja, Mr. President, in his keynote address, said that national security is going to trump every other consideration as far as his government is concerned. Now, it was at that conference that the president laid the foundation for what we have been seeing him doing in relation to court orders. Now, he is saying that releasing zak-zaky to the public constitutes a threat to national security. It doesn't make sense to me. When you read the judgment of Gabriel Kolawole in December 2015, who gave the first order that said that the man should be released, he said the continued detention of Mr. zak-zaky is what constitutes a national security threat. Because he said, it was assuming the man happens to die in detention. Can you fathom the level of crisis that this nation might end up going into? You understand? So it is his continued detention that I think is a threat to national security. His members have been out there. How violent have they been? No, they have not been. In fact, they have been the ones at the receiving end of the military jackboots.
What does the law say, actually? Because Sarah wrote to ECOWAS, as we all know, we'll probably come to that eventually, and they quoted Section 287 of the 1999 Constitution that states that the government is bound by decisions of the court and obligated to implement them, and said it's a constitutional duty for the government to obey court order.
It's clear the position of the law on the liberty of a citizen is limited to the extent there is a court order that says that, okay, you have been convicted, you have been found guilty of an offense, and you have been convicted. That is when your liberty will not be legally constricted. But to the extent that there have been no court judgment that has convicted Mr. Zak-zaky, he is still entitled to his fundamental right to freedom of movement. Now, we have a court order that have said this man has been admitted to bail. He has not been convicted. The trial process is still on. So until there is a judgment, one way or the other, on the offenses he is alleged to have committed, he still enjoys his fundamental right to movement and liberty and all of that.
You were trying earlier to explain that sometimes these things are allowed. That was why I went to him to find out what the law says. Sarah Pindad's petition to the UN actually described the actions of this government as a show, let me use the word now, executive recklessness and impunity. Do you agree with that? Do you think that the executive is just flouting orders indiscriminately?
I would like to start from answering your question, which is this government showing enough respect for court orders? The answer is no.
Yeah, is it a show of recklessness and impunity, irresponsibility? That's some of the words that's been used.
No, I would not agree that it's a show of impunity and recklessness. And my reasons are very minute and straightforward. For you to understand the matter, you must go to the root cause. How did zak-zaky ended up in the hands of the security agency in the first place?
But you need to understand that it's not just zak-zaky that's in the court. We know, for instance, let's look at other issues. We had Dasuki's case. We also had the Sarah got a court case in 2016 on something to do with education. And then we had the looted funds from previous administration that was recovered, information on how these funds were expended. Some would say that if it's to the government's credit if they divulge some of this information, knowing that they've done their back work. But they've not done this. It's not just the case of zak-zaky, it's not just the case of Dasuki, but there are other instances where the government has not responded to court judgment.
We as a people that constitute the nation must continue to hold government accountable, to put it on its toes, to ensure that we get good governance. And hence why we're having this conversation, to look at the pros and cons of these matters. However, the government have come out often at times and shown out information that the man said in question, the leader of the Islamic movement of Nigeria, had shown flagrant disrespect to the security agencies. The chief of army staff was in a convoy and it was accosted. And that is how, they had to go back and, all of these things are inhuman. I do not support it. I do not wish for all of this to happen to my family. So I cannot stand here and speak and say I support what has been done to him. Which is why I would want a case whereby the government haven't detained him for this long, grant him bail, have him come back to face prosecution, and then have the rule of law take its place. That is the ideal thing to do.
They're not doing it. What could be the reason? Are these two cases exactly the same? The Dasuki and the zak-zaky case, are they the same? Should they have the same punishment? Both of them have been in prison since 2015.
Of course. December, I think, yes. Of course, they are very different cases. They are very far off. Dasuki's matter has got to do with embezzlement of funds, the security trust fund, slush funds, rather.
Yes.
However, it is fair to say that the government has not obeyed court judgment enough. However, these are minute cases. These are just 2 cases we're talking about. There's been lots of judgment that the government has obeyed.
Okay, but
so
these are like
we cannot exactly nail it completely for these 2 cases. So which is why I sort of lean towards the possibility of, I mean, it is often said that when governments want to do what they want to do, they will come and throw the national security reason in your face, and there's nothing you can really say. However,
Raymond, I mean, he's just going on. What do you agree with his
I do not agree with
reasons?
him. You see, this is not a banana republic. Assuming whatever it is on the face of this earth that Mr. Zak-zaky and his members we are found or we are taught to have done, as it stands today, there is a court order. The courts in any democracy are the custodians of the laws of the land. They are the interpreters of the law. A judge of several courts of competent jurisdiction has looked at the facts of the case and have said, yes, this man should be admitted to bail and let the prosecution continue his trial. So I would think that a government that came to power on the track of rule of law would comply with that order of the court. We saw the case of Onohen. He attended his trial and he was eventually convicted, right? So why does the government think that if Mr. Zak-zaky is admitted to bail, his prosecution will be stalled in one way or the other? So when you look at this, you now begin to have a sense as if there's a personal vendetta, something that is beyond the physical, that is tied to the continued detention of Mr. Dasuki and zak-zaky.
It's truly a peculiar case, but this question is also to you. I'm thinking the Nigerian Bar Association, the judiciary, so to speak, they are the custodians of the law.
Yeah.
What are they doing? Is there something they can do to, challenge this seeming a growing order of business in this administration?
Before when I started, I told you that the legal framework for enforcement of judgment of courts against the government is skewed in favor of the government. I can tell you today, if you get a judgment against the Lagos State government for, say, 5 billion naira, you can't get that money back. Because, do you know why? Now, Section 84 of the Sheriffs and Civil Process Act that governs the enforcement of judgments of court requires the consent of the Attorney General of a state, or in the case of the federal government, the Attorney General of the Federation, to sign off on that. Now, the Attorney Generals of the states and federation, they are merely puppets of either the president or the governors of the state. You understand? So they will frustrate that process, and without them signing off on that, you can't do anything.
Yeah, that's a strong allegation if you say that
it's not allegation. This is a matter of law, and we go to court every day, we face it.
What can be done to change it? If you say it's skewed in their favor, remember that these people are servants of the people. Citizens employed, put them there. You say in principle.
Of course, in principle, but when you go to the details of it, it is not what it is.
The narrative should not be, as it is now, flagrant disobedience of court orders. So what can the body that is responsible, custodian of the law, so to speak, do to address? The laws are made for people and they can be changed. From
the point of the judiciary, when a judge sitting in his chambers gives a judgment, that is where it ends for the judicial officer. You understand? We run a separation of power system. If he has given a judgment, what remains is for the government to comply with the judgment. But when a government becomes what we have with this government, what do you do? And so that's why I said that our democracy have not left the barracks. You understand? They are still left with that military mentality, and they feel that anything will happen and nothing will happen to them. And you have people in government come out, people like Fesuke Amo come out and purport to defend what is wrong in the eye of the law. So I would say that to a great extent, even the Femi Falana, we are almost handicapped. We are just left to keep pointing out advocacy and hoping that one day a good government, a better government will come that will understand the importance of complying with orders of court in a democratic state.
All right, let's look at the implications for Nigeria, so to speak. In late 2018, we read in the news that the former Secretary of State for International Development says that the federal government disobedience is discouraging investors from coming into Nigeria, that, you know, people might have trust issues as to if they're, and she even cited a case where the federal government is not respecting a court judgment. So internationally, how is this affecting us? You seem to be a bit skewed towards, you know, understanding the reasons why the government is taking the decision. So I'm going to ask you, do you think there is any ripple effect in the larger community with this conduct of our government?
Okay, I'll come to this question, but I like to mention something on the previous conversation, and it is this: every government, as we have it in Nigeria, that we have a democratic rule, have to come back to the polls every 4 years to seek the mandates from its people to govern them again. All of these issues, none of them happened in the last 5 months. There have been issues that's been, you know, traversing since 2015, and then the people still voted this government overwhelmingly in the last polls. So that's, for some reason, is a question we should all ask ourselves. If we all voted, who did we vote for?
Overwhelmingly, but the matter is in court. Overwhelmingly.
There's no judgment, you know, oppose.
Okay, for now.
For now, so we have to leave it as it won.
Yeah, but it's a valid question as Nigerians. If
why did you vote him? Yeah, why did you vote him again?
Okay.
Why didn't we just vote him out? And just, you know, so that is that.
Okay.
Now to your question. See, let's not act like Nigeria is a banana republic, or it's a state that is so, you know, is so lawless. Yes, that there's no nation compared to it. Just as we have our flaws and our problems in Nigeria, so does every other nation have theirs. The federal government, in their bids economically, they've done fairly well, given how they took over the affairs of the state. Yes, no nation wants to go to a state where they are not guaranteed of good governance or rule of law, especially when you go through the rigors of getting a court judgment. It's not easy to get a court judgment. You have to start from maybe the magistrate or the high court, and you go, you pay fees, pay lawyers, show up in courts, and what have you, and then you finally get a court judgment and it's not obeyed. Nobody would like that. So if anybody is saying that they have, you know, concerns or they have resentment as to coming to invest in Nigeria, perhaps it is legit. However, despite our security challenges, despite our democratic challenges, every nation still wants to play ball with Nigeria because of our numbers. So anyone that is this serious about making profit and about extending their economical wings, they know that Nigeria is a place to come to. I'm a businessman and I can tell you that for free.
Okay, that is your thinking. What is your thinking about this? Is there any ripple effect to these seeming continuing this order?
I agree that there are so many of them. You see, recently I wrote a paper on the connection between rule of law and growth of an economy. You see, we tend to overlook a lot of things, but these things, they do matter. You see, today, why is London such a successful economy? Do you know that people leave Nigeria, people leave other parts of the world and travel to London? People choose London to be the arbitration forum. You understand? People execute contracts in Nigeria. At the foot, they say, this contract shall be governed by the law of England. Do you know why? Because they envisage that in a worst case scenario, that the framework of the law there is more robust. They believe that the law there is more robust, and in a worst case scenario, they are going to, the system will run faster. You understand? We have a country whereby respect for rule of law, even the so-called investors, when they come in, they understand how the system works. They also aid in prostituting the process, because they know that they will not sign off on, sign off on contract. They will breach terms of contract, because they know that if you go to court, you'll be stuck in court.
Okay, just to round off. Okay.
Yeah, so imagine when they go back and they tell, and they have a sister investor who wants to invest now. What would they say? Don't go to their market. I have these issues. Someone breached a contract. I tried to enforce. It was stuck there. So, whether we like it or not, there is a direct relationship between rule of law and the growth of any economy.
But so I want to ask you this question. As Sarah in his application, just try and make your response as brief as possible. that, let me see if I can find that quote, that they put the rule of law in Nigeria under siege. They are of the opinion that the rule of law, when it comes to, you know, this court judgment, is under siege. Do you think that is the case?
Under siege? Well, given the examples that we've all discussed there, you would not fault anyone that takes such stand. However, there's a lot more that the government can do in entrenching rule of law, equality, and giving everybody an equal chance. However, I would not see like that. I don't see like that. I wouldn't say we are under siege. We are not under any siege. We are a nation under God.
Because you are not affected. Because you are not affected.
My brother, I'm actually
not affected.
You know what? I will share this personally. I actually have a matter in court as we speak.
Okay.
You know, and then
do you expect justice from it?
And we've been trying to get the judge to sit.
And that's been a problem.
Yeah,
is it a politically exposed matter?
No, it is not.
So you see, it's not in line with what we're talking about.
No, but still, it's a matter in court that has not been, you know, gone through the what's it called, the expected, you know, speed that it should.
All right, gentlemen, we have to end this segment of Plus Politics. The conversation will continue. Thank you very much for coming on the program.
Pleasure.
All right, we will take a quick break, and when we return, we'll be talking firearms, stress, and the Nigerian police. Stay with us. The Inspector General of Police, Muhammadu Buhari, has attributed the misuse of firearms and extrajudicial killings by policemen to work-related stress and emotional conditions, which he says disorients their rationality. Isn't this stated obvious? What solutions should the Nigerian police force be looking at for its officers? Well, I have with me still in the studio Raymond Nkanebe, a legal practitioner. Thank you for staying with us. And joining us afresh is Alistair Wilcox, a political analyst. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.
So, gentlemen, what is your immediate reaction to the IG saying that his men sometimes misbehave, and this misbehavior causes life? What's your immediate reaction? Let me start with you, Wilcox.
Well, in fact, it's not a new story. It's almost like a broken record now, what they call crack record now, when you keep hearing the same thing over and over, and everyone wants to give a reason as to why some misnomer happens. Police, Nigerian police, or everywhere in the world, brutality of police is not strange. It's not new. It's not everywhere in the world that is also work-related like they're making us to understand. It's just that the human nature will always want to react in a way. So I do not really put it that it's work-related or number of hours work that is giving that disorientation. It is just that the Nigerian police has been structured in such a way that they are disoriented even from their barracks, from their offices. And so the attitude they exhibit towards the people makes them to behave the way they are. It has nothing to do with work-related or hours of work. It's just that the orientation that they have towards their job and towards the people has not been right at all.
So you're basically saying that his reduction of the work hours, because he has officially said that no Nigerian police officer will work for 12 hours, as is the practice now, reducing it to 8.
I don't even know how they arrive at their work hours before now. All I know is that I see policemen on the road. I don't know who posts them there, how long they've been there. But ideally, if you say a policeman should work for 8 hours, of course, that's an ideal working hours for everybody, for most offices. Now, police does additional jobs. Sometimes.
Yeah, there's a caveat. He says when there is a national emergency,
no, most times police. Okay, what of those that go on patrol? Those that stay in their counters and all what. I don't know their formations, but for me, it's neither here nor there. If you let him work for 2 hours, if his orientation is not that of job satisfaction or respect for the people he's supposed to protect, respect for human life, and sees himself as an agent of state that is supposed to propagate the ideals of a state. If he doesn't see himself that way, let him work for 1 hour. The day he carries his gun and he drinks paraga and drinks all those stuff that he always drink, he will still misbehave.
Do you agree with his submissions today?
Well, I don't completely agree. For me, I think the new IGP has actually struck at the heart of the matter. And I'm in agreement with his diagnosis of what has led to this festival of police brutality that have increased in recent times. You see, let's take it one after the other. On the leg of work hours, the Nigerian police is understaffed. I think we are doing 1 policeman to 500 civilians, and which is way beyond the United Nations recommendations.
Yeah, that was actually going to be the question I was going to ask you, that on the scale of the troubles bedeviling the Nigerian police, is this the priority, changing the work hours, or there is more?
Of course, there will be more, but relating it to what we've seen in recent times, the surge in police brutality, you might want to now pick that one as one of the key factors. Because when you overstretch somebody, then when you look at the welfare of police officers, you see how emotional frustrations could also set in. Someone works from morning and then he goes back home, he doesn't live in decent house. The wife perhaps assaults him. The next morning he can't wait to come out. So you can imagine how some of this emotional frustration could set in, and it might affect how they use their weapons. So it's to that extent I'm trying to draw a dot along what the IG of police have said. So we should work on increasing the personnel of the force. If we can increase the number, if we can say we have barely 350,000 policemen servicing a population of maybe 200 million. So you can imagine that number. And then some of them are involved in special duties almost round the clock. So you have, let's say, about 200 or 250,000 policemen who are on round-the-clock duties. So across the 30 states, you have security issues in virtually all parts of the country. So the Nigerian police is very understaffed. The welfare of the personnel is not well taken care of. All of this could lead to emotional frustrations that could lead to what we've been seeing in recent times.
In all of this, Nigeria, we always complain about the health care system that we have here generally, and not to talk of the Nigerian police. But what is the place of mental health assessment and education and, treatment for the Nigerian police? Isn't it something that
that
for me should be the focal point? Not number of hours or, well, I don't know how rigorous their jobs are. With due respect to the great work the Nigerian police is doing, I cannot come on national and undermine those great sacrifices that they do. Sometimes you are driving late in the night, you find them there, you drive, like some of those times I travel to places at night, you find them at some checkpoints and all. So I cannot undermine those huge sacrifices that they expose themselves to. But really and truly and fairly, for me, it is the mental and psychological health that the IG should focus on. It has been stressed over and over that our policemen need psychological reorientation. Look, we are talking about the way they brutalize their public. Do they brutalize their wives and children at home? Of course they don't.
But we may not.
No matter how. Have you ever heard that a policeman went home?
Yeah, there's very sporadic cases of that.
There are, even it happened between non-policemen.
Yes.
Those are extreme cases.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is a policeman wakes up, walks back home and stressed out in the office. Maybe he went to catch some robbers or kidnappers or something. He came back home mentally deranged and everything. And you know how sometimes they are, like you said, their wives who are most time jobless, will be waiting for Oga to come to say there is no pepper for the soup. He has not been able to cook soup, and because there was no pepper or Krezu finished, Mama and Keji could not give him credit because they are owing. Did you see him carry his gun and shoot all his family? He will still calm down because that is his family. So if he sees the average police on the road, and what makes them do these things, because most times they are under substances that are not natural.
Should some of use of hard substances be banned in the Nigerian police force? Is it something that can be
Of course, it was not a legal thing.
It's not illegal.
It's not legal, so there's nothing, you can't ban what is not legal, what is not authorized. These things are sourced from the back end of whatever. You see them selling paraga there, you see them selling all these so-called agbo, those substances. They are not legal thing. And of course, they have even been banned, they've been said over and over, this should not be in those environments. But what do? The IG is in Abuja, the commissioner is in Alausa, is in Ikeja.
You just said something. What do? We are Nigerians. A lot of us are scared. A lot of Nigerians are worried. They see a policeman. Their first response is not to run to them for soccer.
Yeah.
Their first response is to run away, and that should not be the norm. So, what will Nigerians do to, have some control over the frustration of these police officers, because they are supposed to be providing a service?
Well, let me just quickly tie up what we are saying to the mental health issue. You see, what leads to mental health? Don't you see a connection between the frustrations at work, poor living conditions? Don't you see the cycles, the psychological consequences that will now graduate into mental health issues? So when you let us look at it from the base. You cannot excuse the poor welfare of police officers from the reactions we've been seeing, the extreme reactions we've been seeing. So we have to go back to the formations of the Nigerian police. We have to go into the welfare. Have you gone to a typical police barrack and look at how the environment looks like? You understand? So somebody who is acclaimed to be a police officer, it's not an easy rank, but when he compares his status to his living conditions, that is a sure recipe for frustration. And you cannot regulate how individuals might react to extreme conditions.
Yeah, but we know now that the IG is trying to, manage the situation.
Let me just say this, what he said, and that's where the point I really wanted to make. You see, we were discussing today on social media, me and some friends, and I said, but the policeman is his own worst enemy and his own problem. My brother mentioned something about the living condition of their barracks. Look, these people, with due respect, they are totally, they live like animals among themselves. Go to the barracks, go to their barracks, and compare that with other service barracks. Go to even the prison, what they call the prison service barracks. Yes. Go to the custom barracks. Go to the immigration barracks. Yes. The police barrack is the worst place you can ever go to. Why? Is it because that you cannot on your own put your environment in a good condition for you to live? They are naturally. Look, forgive me.
Wouldn't that be a generalization?
No. Because if you go to the police barracks, or tell me the police barrack that you find that you can go there and you constantly take a cop. Is it that they are the worst paid personnel in Nigeria?
What do we do?
I'm coming. Take a police van, buy cars today for the police. Each time was saying government is not funding.
You've actually made that point. So
government is not funding. Government is not funding. Go and buy some brand new trucks now for police.
We know.
3 months, come back and see those vehicles. Who used them?
I know you were concerned about that, and that's why we're having this conversation. Yes. How do we manage this? Because these people are crucial to the security of this country, to the security of Nigerians.
You see, it is
so if they are their rationality is hampered somewhat. Yeah. What becomes of the ordinary Nigerian on the street? So what we're looking at is how can we move from point A to point B? How can we change the narrative from frustrated police officers who go about in this month alone, I can count on one hand how many people have died as a result of police shooting. So what can we do? The suggestion about use of stun gun, will that help?
Of course, that would help. You recall during the when Mr. Solomon Arase was IG, now he was one that introduced this stun gun. Then when he left and the MD Abubakar came in, that was when he stopped it for reason that one may not completely know now. So I think we have to go back to the use of the stun gun, at least to limit. But then then you now put the men at risk. So you have to balance.
How do you put them at risk?
To attack.
Because to attack.
When criminals, armed robbers, and thugs, who knows that they are
not... there could be a strategy to ensure that those that are on the highway or maybe some other place, but those that are mingling with citizens, like the SARS, for instance, that interact with Nigerian citizens, they could be made to...
But the SARS also, the main operation is for armed robbers and kidnappers, high-skilled criminals. Unfortunately, because of the extortionistic tendency of the police, they now degenerated to civil issues. SARS is not meant for debt collection and all those area boys. No, you see, from the training point, remember a time during 2013, 2014, when a TV station made a documentary of the police college Ikeja. Starting from the training point is when they're exposed to rot, filthy environment, substandard feeding, and all forms of inhuman behavior, degrading behavior. After that documentary was done, the president was supposed to go there and do something. But of course, the powers that be then turn it around to mean that they want to embarrass the administration. And the whole initiative that the TV station wanted just died down. Now, if we start from the training of the police, their academies, exposing them to quality of dignity of service. Look, if I see a Ghanaian police officer, I feel proud of seeing him. So, but I come back and I say it's Nigerian police officer. You see him like a Boy Scout is even sometimes better.
An object of ridicule.
Object of ridicule. So, my brother, my dad, does it take anybody to tell you that if you are leaving for the office or to enter, you should dress well and look, even if you are going to wear a mufti, you should wear a decent mufti. If you are going to wear, if you are not wearing the uniform, you want to wear mufti. So it is a personal thing.
No, aside from a personal thing, there is something you talked about, either you or him talked about welfare, the remuneration that these people gain. Look, it is not, you talked about how that, affects the psychology of the work, their personality and the work that they do.
That has been the narrative ever since poor enumeration.
Won't that help if the police is better remunerated?
Look, if your mentality, you see, first of all, it's a mentality. The way you will react to 100 naira pay packet, if it is rational, and within that you can rationally behave that you are a human being, the same way you react when you call 100 naira. But if you react with 1 naira that I'm not an emergency policeman, I can wear slippers and go to the office, I can wear canvas and one different legs of socks and go to the office. If they give 1 million, it will not change anything. But if your orientation is made to know that you are an object of public scrutiny, it will change a lot of things. So that their training school and their training curriculum is the starting point. Not just to say you are reducing man hour and the man is still the way he is. You don't reduce man hour and then you create loopholes and gaps that the criminals, like you said, we don't even have enough. Right now, we don't even have enough. And the ones we have, the quality of the ones we have are not up to par with what we should have as the Nigerian police.
What are your thoughts?
Well, we can't excuse formation, because formation is very key. Today, we hold out the legal profession as to be one of the most prestigious. And because the profession places...
the accounting profession.
Okay, let's not go into that professional debate. Because the profession places so much premium on the formation of its members. So we have to go back to see how do we build the police officers we send out into the wider population. We can't take away that. We can't take away the issue of the welfare of the personnel. It is also very, very integral. A man who is not well, if I would say a hungry man is an angry man, right? So if we agree to that saying, so a man who is poorly remunerated is a sure, he's a willing to any extreme you get a reaction. So we have to look at the welfare of the officers and men. And also, of recent, there's an amendment to the Police Act. I've not looked at the act, but I should think that it should the role
the Police Trust Fund.
No. That was
a different one.
Yes,
the role of the Police Service Commission. That is a commission that is almost outside the scrutiny of the public. We have to look at we have to audit the Police Service Commission and find out, because that is the commission that regulates everything that pertains to welfare of men, and you understand. So we have to look at the Police Service Commission and be sure that they're actually living up to the statutory
responsibility.
Yeah, you understand. So I think some of these things will help to change the narrative to
what we're looking at the police and what the government would. What about citizens? There is such poor public image that the police have. Do you think that maybe citizens also play a role in compounding some of this psychological imbalance, so to speak,
Certainly.
that some of these officers, because if you do not respect a police officer, the tendency is he senses it immediately, and that might affect the way he relates. So what is our role?
You see, it is how you endear. Respect is earned.
Yes.
The unfortunate thing is, before now, when we were kids, we see policemen as God. You can't say policeman come even with a baton. Then it was batons. You will run. You are playing football on the street and you see a policeman, you think he's coming to arrest you. You will run. You dare not even. But unfortunately, like I said, they are the enemy of themselves. They lost that. They throw that rest, because when you start collecting 20 naira, 10 naira from bus drivers, from danfo driver, how would they respect you? You compromise. So it is them too that should reinvent themselves and then endear themselves to the public. Look, successive police IGs will come up with some fantastic slogans and ideas, but when it comes down, cascading it down to the rank and file is the issue, because rank and file is the one that you meet every day. Bail is free. You get to a police station and then the man is telling
that is a conversation that
and then the man is telling you that that is IG. Oh no, if you not bring money, then because of the literacy of the people, you work on their psychology and all that. I mean, I have had experiences when I go to the police station, because I've had instances when I had to go and do complaints or I've had interactions, and by the time you get there, even at my level, sometimes I'll be so sympathetic and I'll be like, look, the DPOs sometimes don't do anything. They're just compromising with their abuse because they send their boys out, go and bring returns. So if, for me, one of the things that should be looked into is, if any unit that anybody commits an infraction of losing of life, don't only punish the man, punish the DPO. If the DPOs are, because look at it, if in the UK or US, a police officer does anything wrong, his superior resigns immediately or takes responsibility or something. Don't you punish that? But also, if you punish the DPO, then the DPO should be able now to cascade to these people that, look, any of you that will make me lose my own job or lose my own commission, then you will not take it kindly with the person. You understand? So if that is not done, if the unit commanders are not held accountable for the atrocities of men under their control, then we just keep. We just dancing around the clock. So if there's that accountability and responsibility, up to the level that at some point you call the Commissioner of Police to question, they will sit up. But right now it's a free reign. They do anything they like. If anybody commits an infraction, well, you got to answer for yourself.
I'm afraid we have to really pause this conversation. There's so much to talk about.
There's so much to talk about the police, yes, because it's pathetic.
Yes.
I want to see my police look like the
certainly all of us
like the good police.
Do.
Look, go to Ghana and see policemen in Ghana.
Certainly, the conversation certainly continues. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on the program.
It's my most pleasure. Thank
Always
you
a pleasure to have you join us. Thank you so much.
Nice having you.
We will take a short break, and when we return, I will give my take. Do stay with us.
The Democratic Party, PDP, has accused the All Progressives Congress, APC, of using the police to intimidate the school principal that issued Senator Ademola Adeleke's results. The National Publicity Secretary of the PDP, Kola Ologbodinyo, spoke to newsmen in Abuja, saying several family members of the principal have also been detained by the police without any charge. Ologbodinyo is calling on the police to release those unlawfully detained immediately.
The Nigerian Police, in collaboration with the APC, against arrested Mr. Abbas, the principal of the Ede Muslim High School, Ede, as well as the wife of the school's registrar, Mrs. Rofiyat Oladepo, and her 9-month-old baby. Information available to the PDP shows that AIG Adeleye Oyebade of Zone 2 Osogbo ordered the arrest of the innocent principal of the school and the registrar. When the registrar, Mr. Kabir Oladipo, could not be reached as he is undergoing treatment for legs and arms injuries, which he sustained in a motor accident, AIG Oyebade allegedly ordered one ASP Faliu to arrest his wife, Mrs. Rofiyat Oladepo, with a 9-month-old baby, Both the innocent mother and her baby were dumped at Zone 2 police headquarters in Osogbo even as we speak. It is clear that there is no way a school principal who duly signed and issued a school testimonial under his own hand and position can be said to have forged the same testimonial. The PDP therefore calls on the Inspector General of Police, Mr. Adam Mohammed, to call his men to order on issues related to Senator Adeleke's determination to retrieve his governorship mandate, which was stolen by the All Progressives Congress. While the PDP also urges the IGP to order the immediate release of the innocent school principal, the wife of the school registrar, her baby of 9 months. Our party also counselled the APC and their allies to end their schemes against Senator Adeleke, as they will all come to naught in the face of justice and the will of the
Here is my take, and today I'm focusing on the comment by the Inspector General of Police saying his officers' misbehavior and misuse of firearms, which has led to the death of several innocent Nigerians, is caused by work-related stress. Well, you and I know that a lot of Nigerians are stressed. Shall I go on about the several things that are emotionally draining us, from the standard of living to elected officials not thinking about the people in policy and decision-making, and of course, the Nigerian police? The IG has only confirmed to us what we already know, that police officers are stressed, not just at work, but their well-being. Really, I mean, have you seen a police barracks recently? The rhetorics of telling police officers to return to 8-hour shift sounds like when roadblocks were asked to be removed, and roadblocks still remain across the country. It is beyond making statement upon statement. It is about how we can ensure the people who are to protect the citizens, accidentally or intentionally, whether stress-related or not. What is the solution? Where are the reforms? The mental health conversation should be extended, as contributors have spoken earlier. The well-being should be thought about, and very quickly. If not, we will be worse off for it very soon. I hope all security stakeholders join hands together to ensure before another gun is cocked, the mental screw of the policemen is screwed on tightly. Join us again on Monday as we look at top political issues across the country. My name is Felicity Ezewike. Do take care of yourself and be safe.